What if the ultimate symbol of joy was used to mask a predator who had carefully calculated the destruction of an entire family? How does a man with no criminal record and a high-level career transform into a mass murderer in less than 6 months? This case challenges our understanding of the stable professional and forces us to look at the cracks in a persona that were visible long before the first shot was fired. Welcome. I'm a licensed professional counselor, and this is my mental health analysis of the Jeffery Pardo case. I'll be focusing on the main mental health and psychological indicators while providing the backstory. I don't just talk about the crimes. I talk about the psychology behind the crimes and the mysteries that captivate us. I look beyond the facts of the case to understand the why of the crime. My analysis is based on my speculations. It's not a diagnosis of anyone involved in this case. On December 24, 2008, a quiet community of Coven, California, the Ortega family was celebrating their annual Christmas Eve party. At approximately 11:30 p.m., a knock at the door revealed a man dressed in a full Santa Claus suit, carrying a large gift-wrapped box. The man did not offer the gift, but instead pulled out a handgun. This immediate transition from a figure of trust to a source of violence is our first major psychological indicator. The weaponization of social symbols to facilitate predatory access. Pardo did not just snap. He chose a costume that exploited the psychological defenses of his victims during a time of celebration. As a counselor, I often look at how individual manages conflict and whether they possess the capacity for empathy or if they view others as obstacles to be removed. Pardo's history reveals a pattern of profound deception that suggests a fragmented sense of self and an inability to handle perceived narcissistic injury. Years before the massacre, Pardo had been engaged to a woman and fathered a child who suffered a severe injury in a swimming pool accident that left the child paralyzed. Pardo did not stay to support the child or the mother. Instead, he abandoned them and moved on to a new life, even claiming the child was a dependent on his taxes for years despite having no contact. This abandonment and a subsequent financial exploitation of a tragedy are significant red flags for a personality that lacks genuine emotional connection. But why would a man abandon his own paralyzed son and then use that son's experience as a tax shield? This behavior points to a profound lack of empathy and transactional view of human relationships. When Pardo met Sylvia Ortega, he presented himself as a successful, stable electrical engineer who was active in his church. They married in 2006, but the facade quickly began to crumble because Pardo insisted on maintaining separate finances and refused to support Sylvia's 3 children from a previous marriage. In the world of clinical mental health, we look at financial control as a common indicator of a need for dominance within a domestic partnership. The marriage lasted less than 2 years before Sylvia filed for divorce, leading to a legal battle that Pardo perceived as a total personal and financial defeat. Is it possible that Pardo's identity was so tied to his professional status and his bank account that losing them felt like an actual death of the self? By July 2008, Pardo was fired from his job for billing fraudulent hours, a move that coincided with the mounting pressure of his divorce. Losing his job likely stripped away the last remaining pillar of his successful man persona, leaving him with a deep sense of resentment toward those he blamed for his downfall. During the divorce proceedings, he complained to a friend that Sylvia was taking him to the cleaners, despite the fact that he was the one who had hidden the previous child and lied about his finances. This externalization of blame is a common psychological trait in individuals who cannot take responsibility for their own failures. Instead of looking inward at his own deceptive practices, Pardo focused all of his rage on Sylvia and her parents, Joseph and Alicia. He viewed the Ortega family's close bond as a threat, or perhaps as something he was being unfairly excluded from after the divorce was finalized. The divorce was settled just 1 week before the attack, and Pardo was ordered to pay Sylvia $10,000 and return her wedding ring. To a healthy individual, this is a stressful but manageable end to a chapter. To Pardo, it was a public humiliation that demanded a violent response. The level of planning involved in the Christmas Eve attack reveals a cold, calculated state of mind rather than a disorganized break from reality. Pardo has spent months preparing. He purchased 4 semi-automatic handguns and thousands of rounds of ammunition. He also constructed a makeshift flamethrower out of a pressurized tank designed to spray racing fuel, which he disguised inside that gift box that was wrapped. This level of premeditation suggests a warrior mindset, where the perpetrator views themselves as a righteous avenger rather than a criminal. What goes through a mind of a man who spends his final weeks meticulously planning a device intended to incinerate his former family? Psychologically, we call this displacement of aggression, where the anger felt toward one person is projected onto everyone associated with them. Pardo didn't just want to kill Sylvia. He wanted to erase her entire support system, her history, and her home. When he entered the Ortega home, he didn't just fire at Sylvia. He began a systematic execution of the guests. 9 people were killed that night, including Sylvia and her parents. In a display of what experts call overkill, overkill often indicates a high level of personal animosity and a desire to completely dehumanize the victims. However, the plan did not go perfectly for Pardo. When he used the fuel-spraying device to ignite the house, the resulting explosion was much larger than he anticipated. The blast caused Pardo's Santa suit to melt into his skin, inflicting third-degree burns that likely altered his escape plan. He had rented a car waiting with a map to Canada and thousands of dollars in cash strapped to his legs, suggesting he intended to survive and flee. But the physical pain and the realization that his plan had literally blown up in his face led him to his brother's house in Sylmore. There he ended his own life with a single gunshot, leaving behind a booby-trapped car and a trail of devastation. How does a person reconcile their desire for survival with the finality of death by suicide when their plan fails? It's likely that Pardo's narcissism could not handle the reality of being a burn-hunted fugitive instead of the mastermind he imagined himself to be. His suicide wasn't necessarily an act of remorse, but rather a final step in maintaining control over his own narrative. Even in death, he tried to cause more harm by rigging his car to explode when the suit remnants were moved, a final parting gift for the investigators. When we look at the wreckage of the Covina massacre, we see more than just a crime. We see the end result of years of suppressed rage and psychological lying. Pardo's ability to lead a double life, hiding a secret child, lying to his employer, and presenting as a good guy at church, is the hallmark of a high-functioning antisocial personality. The Santa disguise was not just a costume for one night. It was a metaphor for how he had lived his entire adult life. He wore a mask of normalcy to get what he wanted, and when that mask was stripped away by the divorce court, he decided no one else deserved to live. By understanding these red flags, the history of abandonment, the financial deception, the externalization of blame, and the cold premeditation, we can see the why behind the horror. Pardo felt entitled to a life he hadn't earned and a family he didn't support, and his violence was a major temper tantrum on a lethal scale. This is such a bizarre case, such a tragic case on one of the most celebrated times around the world is Christmas Eve. And the next day, celebration. It's a time of joyous family connection. And Pardo used that to his advantage. That was a part of his plan, unfortunately. And his behaviors, from the deception, from hiding, from lying to his company, that speaks to a person that is pathological. Such a tragedy. So what did you think about this case? Were there any elements that stood out to you? If you want more mental health analysis of true crime stories like this one, be sure to subscribe for more. And if you found this case compelling, be sure to watch this next story. It will make you more aware of your surroundings. Thank you for joining me today. Until next time, Stay curious, stay safe.